Who actually owns them?
Well, everybody owns them. You have everything from someone someone grew up in a house and the parents stayed there and stayed there and stayed there. The kids have moved to another neighborhood or out of state or into the suburbs, and the parents have stayed there and then they go into a nursing home. So the house is left vacant. If the kids don't want to deal with it because the values are low and it's a hassle, they sometimes abandon those. We buy a lot of houses from those types of sellers.
Okay.
You have bank-owned houses where the banks are sitting on inventory, and they still are, just like in Detroit, like in every other city, suburb, and rural area of the country. There's bank-owned inventory that's just being held, and is creating that kind of false scarcity in the market. Which, as an investor, over time, I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing for us, as long as they continue to help stabilize prices and trickle inventory in. The banks working in conjunction with each other, or collusion, if you will, isn't necessarily bad for market values. So we have that false scarcity, which brings prices up. So you've got banks owning them. The city of Detroit owns a lot of properties. The Wayne County, which is Detroit's county, Wayne County owns a lot of properties that they've foreclosed on through tax foreclosure. The Michigan Land Bank, these are all different government entities own properties.
Yeah.
And of course, Fannie, Freddie, HUD, and FHA own properties as well. So you've got the government owned properties, and then you've got foreign, I won't call them investors because I don't really think it's the word, but they're speculators who will come in and buy properties in bulk. I've sold large packages of hot properties, 60, 100 properties or more that get sold in a single sale to a bulk investor, but they're not really an investor. They just buy the package and then they sit on it most of the time. Some of them don't. I mean, it depends on the actual person, but a lot of them just buy and sit and then, are waiting for prices to go up, and they carry them and either pay the taxes or don't pay the taxes and ride it out. Sometimes they board them up and maintain them. Other times they just let them sit, basically unattended and abandoned by an absentee landlord. So it's who's not looking to rent them or get cash flow out of them. So you have a lot of properties that basically aren't really controlled by anyone actively working them, and are owned by a disinterested entity, whether it be individuals, corporations, governments, banks, or family members. So
Yeah.
you've got a lot of that going on. But eventually, those properties either succumb to being stripped out and trashed, and then torn down and demoed by the city. The city has now received, I think it's $100 million spread out between Detroit and four other cities in Michigan for blight removal from the federal government. Plus, they've got their own blight removal in place, which allows the city to go in and through. It's a process. It's a governmental process. They have to a legal process. They have to go and get all the proper approvals, and but eventually a property gets on the demo list and it gets torn down, and then you're left with a vacant lot.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen over the next few years is those vacant properties are continuing to shrink and shrink and shrink in number. And we're doing our part to take the vacancies and get them rented out and performing. So, and I'm not alone. There are a lot of investors in Detroit and people working in Detroit helping with this process. So what's happening is the number of available properties is decreasing, or the number of vacant properties that are not lived in is decreasing, as the same time as that people are putting more and more money into the city and looking to buy. So I think we're going to see the market stabilize as far as available housing sometime in the next decade.
Yeah. Wow. Oh wow, that's good. Now, could you buy like a whole block, maybe from like 3 or 4 different entities or different owners? And you said that somebody's planting trees. Can you actually plant trees, or would the city come down on you for zoning and everything else? Or do they just not care at this point?
Well, no, everybody cares. Everybody cares more than they care more about what you do with your money and your land than they care about what's going on in their particular neighborhood. It seems like sometimes you got a lot of people telling everybody else what to do.
Okay.
But there was a good bit of outrage about this, this white suburban Jewish carpetbagger who actually lives down the street from me in the city. So I don't know how any of those things really. I mean, it's irrelevant. He's a Detroiter, I'm a Detroiter, and these are Detroiters who are complaining, but they're saying, this is stuff we could be using for community gardens or to build on. And the fact of the matter is that I've driven every single block in this particular neighborhood looking for houses, and haven't myself seen more than one community garden / urban farm on these vacant lots. So it's just a bunch of talk. But in order to buy a block, which is what you were asking.
Yeah.
I get to ask that question a lot, and you hit the nail on the head. You got 3 or 4 or 5 different owners that you've got to deal with on a block that's got a lot of aggregation going on, or you've got as many as 30 or 40 different owners where where each lot is owned by a different individual. So getting all of those together, herding all those cats is a big project.
Yeah.
And the big question comes is, why would you want to do that? I think the people like the idea of having properties together.
Yeah.
Which is great. And I've seen some developments in the city where people will get MISHDA, which is the Michigan Housing Authority, and government funds from other sources, and low interest or loans or grants. And they'll go in and they'll do infill houses building in a neighborhood.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's quite successful. And they'll get 3, 4, 5 lots in a row, or 7 out of 10 lots. And that can work really well in the city, as long as you've got everything lined up and your ducks in a row, and make sure that you've got the ability to get the end buyers the financing they need to buy these basically $80,000 to $150,000 new houses on a block where other homes are selling for $10,000 to $40,000.